Doamnelor și domnilor, bună ziua!
Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Welcome to the panel called Protecting Critical Infrastructure, Safeguarding Communication System in Uncertain Times. I am Marcel FOCA, Senior Expert within New Strategy Center, and it is my privilege to join the next speakers. Brigadier General Maxim DOBRINOIU from the Special Telecommunications Service. Welcome, General. Mr. CîMPEAN, Director of the National Cybersecurity Directorate. Welcome. Mr. Romeo, MILEA, Network Development Director of Vodafone Romania, and Brigadier General Mihai BURLACU from the Ministry of National Defense. Welcome, General. As in telecommunications networks, for this panel, every second is precious, so I will go directly to the topic. We live in an ever more connected world. Security and reliability of communication networks have become primordial for our nowadays society. So we very much rely on the availability of uninterrupted communication, and other critical infrastructures depend on these networks, from transport and power grids, health systems, financial institutions. At the level of the population in the past years, the way in which we communicate changed almost completely. Those in which we collaborate and work from at least one mobile device that is constantly at hand of within reach of a person, until the broad-scale implementation of the IoT. The dependence of telecommunication services has never been more present than now. Given this dependency on telecommunication services and devices, and given the unprecedented uncertainties that the world has been facing, from global situations, armed conflicts, protecting telecommunication services has become an urgent need. So in this panel, we will exploit the challenges that the critical infrastructure operators have to face in protecting telecommunication services in uncertain times. We will also refer to the continuous threats, inherent vulnerabilities of modern networks, and possible consequences of a communication system failure. If we still have time, we hope to speak of proactive measures that can be taken to mitigate the risks and to increase resilience and to secure continuity of telecommunications networks. Having said this, I will stop now and give the floor to General DOBRINOIU. Hello.
Da? Ok. Bună ziua, stimat audiență.
Hello, distinguished audience. Thank you, Mr. FOCA and New Strategy Center, for the honoring invitation to take part in this renowned and prestigious event. Allow me to refer now to some matters for critical infrastructure as the Special Telecommunications Service perceives it. We own, operate, and manage quite many critical infrastructures at national level. The strategic and security context that we see, that we live, forces us, dear guests, to have a very pragmatic approach on the role of critical infrastructure and essential services for society, for the economy, for defense, and why not for national security. What is interesting to notice is that the new directive on the resilience of critical entities brings an interesting shift of focus from critical infrastructure to critical entities and essential services, and from protection to resilience in delivering critical infrastructures that they make available to the state vital such services for the Romanian state. STS has managed to adapt to this aggressive of some sorts security context, and for some years now has been implementing a series of principles in their own solutions of digitalization, such as security by design, privacy by design, redundancy, disaster recovery, and we also recently we are concerned on zero trust security. We do not forget and we do not neglect, of course, interconnections, as you mentioned, be it interconnections of infrastructures, of systems, or of services, or the interoperability between various institutions of the Romanian state with the private environment. Why? Because the better we understand these interdependent relations, the more important or the better can we shape and perform risk management activities, and why not proper security measures implementation of critical or essential services. What is very important for us, well, human resource is very important. STS invests a lot in attracting high-quality, well-skilled workforce. Let's not forget that the human was, is, and will be the weakest link in any security chain. That's why we all have to pay attention to the human resource to prevent inside threats. We are usually very attentive to the threat that comes from outside, and we neglect the one from inside, and we should do best not to do so. And of course, the other awareness-raising measures, cyber hygiene. It would be great if at the level of the public administration, such cyber hygiene and security programs would be implemented. I will not get too much into these details. I will leave it to Director CİMPEAN. And of course, cooperation. We believe that this cooperation between all institutions, all stakeholders, those that own, manage, or operate critical and essential infrastructures, is basically the key to success. We focus on cooperation, and of course, no institution has a 100% solution for everything in their pocket, and only by cooperating can we truly secure critical infrastructures and provide the level of security and safety that the state and the citizens expect to receive. That's it from me. Thank you. I will speak in English.
For our esteemed foreign guests, probably in this very strong panel, probably I'm the only organization that does not operate anything critical. Nevertheless, the Romanian Cyber Directorate, as a civilian agency, has a very interesting task. Day in, day out, we have to worry. We have to worry about risk. We have to worry about how resilient our national infrastructures are. And we like a lot to, first of all, to observe the excellent job our colleagues from Special Telecommunications Service, from Defense, from private operators of infrastructure, how excellent job they do and how resilient they succeed to keep their services, their assets and so on. But in the same time, we would like to see accelerating a lot more what General mentioned, the cooperation, actually, for a very simple reason. We have to be resilient and stay secure in cyberspace as an ecosystem. It's probably, and I'm choosing carefully my words, probably no longer sufficient to act properly, to be secure as a single entity, as a single organization. As long as I depend on my private contractors, on my business partners, on our allies and friends from Romania and from abroad. So what we noted since Colonial Pipeline, since the SolarWind story, since the whole bunch of wipers that were deployed and activated at the beginning of the Russian invasion in Ukraine, what we noted absolutely has shown and demonstrated to all of us that you have to activate the ecosystem. You have to absolutely discuss, cooperate, exchange information, of course, to the extent is allowed by the law and by the role of each organization, but remaining, staying in isolation, it's no longer the way to go. Honestly, I pay a lot of attention to the beginning of the war in Ukraine, and I was surprised that in most of cases at that time, private actors were the ones that detected quite a number of new techniques and tools and protocols of attack, of cyber attack. I was impressed, and we want to learn the lesson of Ukraine in how effective and efficient they succeeded to activate their entire ecosystem, in particular governmental bodies working together with private service providers, working together with international partners, and working with even individual experts in a very, very, very interesting manner. You know, the famous Ukrainian cyber army. And we can learn definitely a lot from those. Now, another element that makes me worry day in, day out, it's simply, on one hand, the proliferation of the regulations, and we all have to handle those. It's clearly that more will come in the coming months and years on cybersecurity. Will be more rules, more agreements, whether it will be a national level or European Union level, or will be agreements with licensed partners in formats like, I don't know, NATO or 3C initiatives or whatever format. So more will come, and we have to deploy measures, we have to take actions, we have to establish newer formats to cooperate more efficiently and effectively. That's one thing. Another concern I have, it's simply the technology proliferation that we observe. It's obvious that our attack surface is increasing day by day. Every new app, any new server, any new machine, everything we plug in the network, in our infrastructure, is increasing the attack surface. And mind you, technologies that, to be very honest, I speak for my own organization, we have a tough time to keep up in terms of knowledge, skills, very good understanding of those technologies. Of course, we rely on more and more on highly competent and dedicated suppliers in order to compensate for the knowledge we don't have. But nevertheless, more technologies, sorry, more sophisticated tools and assets and apps that we have somehow to learn to work with. We have to learn how to test, how to certify, how to operate. So, mulțumesc. Thank you so much. So, see, cooperation. Thank you. I apologize, 10 seconds. Okay, now I'm good to go. Let's not forget, many organizations, they still see cybersecurity as a cost center. It's a cost. Simply because we forgot about the importance of such transversal, I dare to say, domain that reflects and makes an impact on every very single, let's say, business process, activity, infrastructure, whether it's organizational level, social level, economy, basically the entire ecosystem. So at the end of the day, let's not forget, and please take this back home with you, as long as we consider cyber, and not only cyber, IT as well, the digital transformation domain and so on, we consider them just simply cost centers where we have to invest and spend some money, but we don't succeed to emphasize the value of those domains, whether it's cybersecurity or simple IT and digital. So we may let's say, have the wrong approach, in my humble opinion. Of course, I have to sell my merchandise to you and say, okay, cyber is cool and nice and sexy, which is the case. And what I invite you to do, from this perspective, just have a bit deeper conversations, which is something I do day in, day out, in particular with students, with a very, very brilliant young generation. And I must tell, I was surprised and impressed, coming back to the human resource and the talent topic that was mentioned, how eager those guys are really to try something new. And probably that's the best investment we can make in order to prove that cybersecurity responsible cybersecurity teams, they can deliver value to their organization, to their country, to the society, and so on. Thank you so much.
Domnule director CîMPEAN, mulțumesc mult. Și acum îl invit pe domnul director MILEA.
Bună ziua, mulțumesc pentru invitație. Reprezintă o companie privată care are o infrastructură critică importantă în România și în Europa. 25% din traficul de internet global trece într-un fel sau altul prin rețeaua noastră. Și având în vedere explozia device-urilor și tehnologiilor, în special în zona Internet of Things, avem un rol foarte important în a asigura continuitatea serviciilor în situații de pace, dar și în situații critice, cum ar fi cutremure sau alte conflicte. Infrastructura unui operator este critică pentru că are, pe de-o parte, o groază de clienți ce se bazează pe comunicații. În principiu, viața noastră începe să fie din ce în ce mai mult în mâna tehnologiei, fără să ne dăm seama. Și nu în ultimul rând, în momentele de criză, cum sunt cutremurile, inundații sau alte evenimente, apelezi la rețea pentru a putea comunica sau pentru a cere ajutor. Din acest motiv, noi considerăm că reziliența este foarte importantă și pe palierul acesta al rezilienței vedem două direcții importante.
Two important directions. One, technological resilience on providing or ensuring communication in any circumstance, even during disaster, replacing equipment, backup equipment, and so forth. But also on cybersecurity, which is ever more important. As the previous speakers mentioned, we realize of the importance of cyber security and information that goes through it just or only when we are exposed. It's just like when you take out an insurance, you know, life insurance or for your home, and you only use it when you're in trouble. So that's why really it's very difficult to understand that concept, the value of that concept. So Vodafone has a very important campaign to raise awareness among its customers. Cybersecurity is a concept that has to be part of our life. Within the organization, the networks are protected. We have three levels at which we act. The security by design, as already mentioned. Any new application installed goes through ways of testing, methods, implementation, and interconnection. This is a way of continuously testing security, and we have a series of checks, basically, that we test, from user access to implementing patches in software networks, or even periodical penetration tests. And another level is on cyber prevent and defense, where cooperation with government organizations, authorities is very important, and any other such agencies that ensure national security. Another important element is that if, in the beginning, the part of resilience of a communication network was a lot on physically ensuring infrastructure, that it is available, or that you are protecting against flooding or earthquake. Now we believe that coming first is cybersecurity. It is a very important element that can hit and impact you without you even realizing. Hackers are far more predisposed to testing the vigilance, or rather more willing to test the vigilance of users. So that is why we have to have we have to be proactive in this approach. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Milea. I ask Brigadier General BURLACU to take the floor.
For that, but you know, I have some slides, and I'm very confident that it's a better approach to just to try it in English. So, and in the interest of time, bear with me and allow me to read some thoughts, just to be sure that I will use in the most effective way these 5 minutes or 6 minutes you gave me. So. I'm very honored to be with you today, having the opportunity to give you a snapshot of our current challenges and plans regarding defense critical information infrastructure in Romania. Before I start, I would like to take a moment to express my gratitude to you all and to all that made this forum possible. Please, next slide, please. Currently, defense is facing a new world of tension where war seems to be accepted in our daily life, and insidious control of information infrastructure seems to be at stake. In this new geostrategic context, defense must adapt people, processes, and its technologies, also doctrine, strategies, and tactics, and reinvent itself as it has done throughout history. From information gathering to well-informed preparation of strategic and operational decisions, good knowledge is essential for preventing risks and threats and neutralizing them when prevention has failed. Slide, please. So I'm looking just to outside threats and, of course, our vulnerabilities, but the main challenge is from the outside. And yes, it's a different approach from what was already has been said. I do not want to scare you, but that seems to be a current approach consistent with the Chinese information warfare goals and objectives that could target our own information infrastructure and associated level of resilience. Slide, please. Russia has developed also this new kind of warfare, which is supposed to combine conventional military power with aggressive cyber attacks, disinformation, and electronic warfare in order to deny or disrupt the critical information infrastructure. Coercive tools range from the spectrum of fake news and online troll farms to terrorist financing and paramilitary engagements. Approaches lie in the contested arena between routine statecraft and open warfare. Slide, please. Both electronic warfare measures and more sophisticated cyber operations are complementing each other as part of information warfare, providing cross-cutting components and dependencies that are exploiting critical information infrastructure vulnerabilities. They are using offensive and defensive tactics and procedures. Okay, next, please. Offensive and defensive tactics and procedures in a variety of combinations to shape, disrupt, and exploit adversarial use of the electromagnetic spectrum while protecting friendly freedom of action consistently. Russia's growing technological advances is allowing its forces to jam, disrupt, and interfere with our communications, navigation, or other sensor systems. We have to have in mind also dual-use systems, so it's not just defense, military infrastructure or services. They are, of course, there are dependencies, and we have to have in mind dual-use or civilian infrastructure as well. So the electromagnetic spectrum is covering that is subject of threat is not just looking to defense, to military infrastructure and systems, but also to civilian. I'm just exemplifying with the GPS or GNSS, so navigation and other civilian in nature infrastructures. Okay, so please, the next one. Russia's growing technological advances is allowing its forces to jam, disrupt, and interfere with our communications, navigation, or other sensor system. In the coming years, we may witness an ever-growing convergence of Russia's electronic warfare, cyber, and information warfare approaches, which will further challenge our concepts and practices. These systems cover surveillance, protection, and countermeasures against commercial and military usage of the electromagnetic spectrum as well. Many of these systems are highly mobile, including small deployable systems, UAVs, making targeting and neutralizing them more complex and challenging. So on the right side, you can find Russian long-range sensors and weapon networks, weapon systems. There are just a few of them covering strategic level of their framework. Also on the left, you can see the complexity of the battle space that is including satellite communications, also various waveforms. So the electromagnetic spectrum is a very key issue when we are planning and developing or preparing operations. Go on, please. Okay. So, yes, real-time C4ISR functions and services are highly dependent on electromagnetic spectrum control or superiority in a much contested environment, but also dependent on the successful planning of cyber and space operations, where preserving the critical information infrastructure is an essential task. What is very important is that these infrastructures are essential to support command and control, to have the right picture of operational environment, so and to be able to share information across the battle space. Next, please. Military operations are executed in an increasingly complex environment where all operational domains are highly connected. The successful orchestration of military tasks across all domains, synchronized with non-military activities, should deliver converging effects at the speed of relevance, relying on seamless data management between various entities and their secure access to critical information infrastructure. So everything is connected. That's the idea, and we have to have in mind all this data exploitation, data-driven organization that have to put together all the data and to deliver and share it across the multi-domain operations environment, all this information between sensors and effectors. Of course, including the decision makers. And the key issue, maybe you will not be able to see it, is civil-military cooperation, as already has been said. Go, please. On the slide, there are depicted key elements of Romanian national security and defense system, including major stakeholders involved. Ministry of Defense is continuously adapting and developing its own ability to respond to a cyber crisis, implementing the integrated crisis management concept and national decisions, tailoring and improving its own part of operational planning process and cyber defense management framework, but also enhancing interagency cooperation at technical, operational, and Pol-Mil level. Next one. The overall transformation challenges and opportunities we are tackling are obviously linked to emerging technologies, shaping the long-term requirements for the future of defense. every new thing is coming with new vulnerabilities, and you can go on. It's I don't want to prolong this, but we can discuss what we are looking in the next very short term or later on to absorb all these new things, but be cautious with all these vulnerabilities that are coming. Next. So, according to the NATO's analysis, the following emerging technologies are the most relevant, either as a threat or as an opportunity. I don't have enough time to go into all this, but the idea is that some of them are should be maintained or reinforced. Other technologies are under research and development, experimentation, tested, validated, or able to be in service very quick, sometime, or some of them are should be adopted. And as was mentioned before, you can find data-centric security, zero trust, and other new things. If we have time, we can go into details. Go on, please. On the slide, you can find some challenges and limitations. As we all of us know very well, we are again looking to people, processes, and technology. People are very important with the right level of training, smart young people that should be talented people that are a very key resource we are lacking now. And yes, also important things that have to be taken into consideration are on the screen. Next. I think there is the last one is the idea that we, in order to protect or to reinforce the resilience of our infrastructure, we have to take care about capabilities. And this is what we are doing in the defense. For every line of effort, we are developing capabilities. So DOTLM, PFI, if you are not accustomed with this, that means doctrine. We have a new cybersecurity and defense law and an improved doctrinal framework that is now implemented. That is a new thing that are keeping us busy. Also organization, a new cyber command that is close to final operational capability, CD deploy, and so on. Link up with the electronic warfare. Also training, as I said, multinational activities, cyber ranges, exercises are important for us. Interagency cooperation, many times have to recall this idea. And also a new way to do procurement, acquisition, to provide, to get security tools and to have the ability to control the supply chain in this area, cyber and not only. Personnel, we need new strategies for top skilled and talented IT experts to do recruitment, to motivate them and to be able to retain them in the system. They are now of course, they are looking for new opportunities in the private sector or in the other institutions they are present on the scene. And of course, infrastructure, data centers, infrastructure, that means cloud, and what we have to do to implement new things, new features, including machine learning, artificial intelligence, and other very new methods that are coming, they are on the spot. And the last point is data management and zero trust. That was a new kind of doing business in a new type of framework that have to be implemented to improve our security, cyber security for defense. That's all from my side. Sorry for being so long, but I had slides. I'm waiting for the questions, and I'm looking to answer them or to take them back and to give a proper answer from my authorities. Thank you.
General BURLACU, thank you. Now switching back to Romanian for free discussions. Înainte de a prelua întrebări din sală,
I challenge you, gentlemen, to share some thoughts outside the very close topic of communication network. I try to come up with a question that needs explanation. How critical is the critical infrastructure? But allow me to explain this question a little bit, to detail it. On the one hand, we notice that in the recent or ongoing situation of the Ukraine war, the army relied a lot on information coming from the citizens. They were trained to report what tools to use in terms of communication tools so that the information, valuable information, may lead or get to the army decision makers. On the other hand, when the systems that were considered to be traditionally critical, when they were down, the army and the state went to private providers for communications, and they were certainly not taken into account before the onset of the war. Those private contractors contributed both in terms of communication networks, and cybersecurity, so they supported the state, and their intervention was critical to ensure the continuity of the state operation. So they became a part of the critical infrastructure. Given this continuous change of the situation in the field, I'm asking, how critical is the critical infrastructure, namely what we traditionally thought to be the critical infrastructure? Should we now redefine what a critical infrastructure is? Just to make a joke, I'd like to say that critical infrastructure is critical, depending on how much we allow it to be critical. Well, of course, the critical infrastructure is critical so long as it is indispensable to the state, first of all, to the society, to the business environment, to the people. In theory, that's what the definition would be. In practice, I don't think we should change the definition. We should just get to a different mindset and no longer be concerned with the protection of the critical infrastructure, but to do everything in our power to make the infrastructure to be resilient in time. For that, we first of all need a risk analysis to know what we're facing in terms of threat, vulnerabilities, and to take all measures so that the essential services and the infrastructure that an essential service is based on is resilient to mostly everything. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to speak very clearly. During the pandemic, we've seen that many infrastructure elements and many operators operating infrastructure are more critical than we initially thought. So a lot beyond what is given as a definition in a guide, in a law, or other piece of legislation. I very clearly remember the moment when Facebook disappeared for a few hours from the online environment. Please believe me, that was a very critical moment for many children, many teenagers who used to use this social network. So it actually depends on the perspective you look at the critical infrastructure from. The trend is currently to rearrange these puzzle pieces to so it's important to focus, like the General mentioned, to focus on resilience in terms of a concept per se that gains momentum and importance. And it also depends on our capability as infrastructures, technology providers, institutions, to maintain the infrastructure, to keep it working in its current role, one way or another, depending on the type of attack or incident. Not least of all, one other thing I wanted to mention, regardless of the scenario we might take into account and that we might get ready for, life and reality will probably prove that they are still obsolete, and there will always be an ounce of unforeseen or unpredictable in everything. There's an axiom here in this area stating that regardless of how perfect or perfectly you might build a system, a certain level of perfection will still exist outside of your system. I have two angles that I look at the issue from. First of all, we are thinking about the infrastructure that somehow proves that the lack thereof leads to a big issue in your life, a big problem. And there are a lot of things to say about it there. On the other hand, I think the critical infrastructure is also the infrastructure that you can use to develop for the future. And so it can create more opportunity for our personal lives. So, at the ground level of development, there are elements and factors that must be resilient so that you can build for the future something that will be sustainable for life. I hope you can hear me. As already mentioned, the society resilience is important, but we are speaking about the sum of the civilians, of the citizens that need critical services to be provided. Facebook can be one, or we can speak about water supply and power supply. Perceptions can be different. So the answer should be very easy, but it isn't. We should intervene in terms of education, of training, of the young people, and to get ready for the future, as explained before. Technology, however, is the best to bring solutions. We should not move internet to outer space. We can use innovative solutions to be agile enough and work better with the private sector representatives, given that today it's very hard to cooperate and collaborate. Speaking about my own institution, I hope that we're here under Chatham House. I hope we can build these partnerships, enabling us to have more agility, flexibility, and capacity to serve the citizens better. Thank you, gentlemen. I would like to throw another topic at you with probably two subdivisions. In our current times, we cannot deal with the defense and protection of the society without the resilience of its infrastructures. However, if the defense and protection of the European structure, if we discuss about it in the NATO context, and the critical infrastructures are discussed about in the EU context alone, I have two sub-questions here. How do you see a better correlation in between these two paths? Because at national level, each EU or NATO member state requires both. At the EU level, how do you think we should reduce the gap between the east and west of Europe in terms of the density of transit capacity and the quality of the vital communication networks? Wow. Let's give the floor to General BURLACU to leave the heavy weights in terms of NATO. And I'd like to start with one of your questions. I don't know why we have the idea that there is a gap between the West and West in terms of data, transport, or infrastructures. I think that even the Romanian state with the private sectors have invested massively in building transport capacity. For instance, in the telecommunication network continues to invest not only for the well operation of the institution itself, but for the good operation, well operation of the country, and this network is made available to all the state-owned institutions, including the ones in the defense system. The transport capacity is very high. It's comparable even to what is found in Western Europe. Even Mr. Dan Câmpean, who lived for a very long time in Western Europe, can tell you that we have a very high internet speed, but this is not about the internet. I think we are compatible with the Western societies. So we shouldn't be ashamed. We should be proud of what has been done. And we should look proudly at well investing in the future, because the state will make sure to have a good data transportation system where a lot of digitization and other constructions can be overlapped, and they will become essential services and critical infrastructures in the future. Now, when it comes to the correlation between the EU and NATO, I think Romania is, as you know, part of all or in both organizations. If we comply with the decisions and directives in terms of critical infrastructures, and not only, this can only be seen for the best, especially when it comes to what Romania provides as support to NATO. So I think we're on the right path from the perspective of the institution I represent, and we should stay optimistic. Thank you. If I may say something myself, I'd like to focus on the NATO and the EU question. Let's remember that they're both bureaucratical institutions with many complicated rules, but with a unique format, which is the multilateral cooperation format. They have their own interests, projects, ideas, programs that need to be discussed in a very complex format, so it takes a lot of time. Well, there are also options to get close. Both the EU and NATO acknowledge the importance of dually using the technologies both for defense and for civilians. We can't use 5G only for civilians or only for the army. So if I am to go back to the topic, both organizations acknowledged the importance of using technologies in both fields. There are programs and softwares dedicated to bringing closer the software technology producers for the use and the benefit of the member states in the two organizations. And I'm now choosing my words carefully. More initiative at the level of the member states to the two organizations, the EU and NATO, and a better understanding of the most effective and efficient mechanisms of cooperation, of idea promotion, especially when it comes to the new technologies, the cyber digital technologies. Probably that will be the path that will speed things up, so we are going to see answers and solutions a lot faster than we do now. Thank you. In the private communications sector, everything is very well framed through technological standardization, but also through legislation, especially in Europe, through the local and European legislation framework, where we have a harmonization. In terms of the role of the operators, yes, I'm sure that in the future, just as mentioned here in the panel, the private operators will be more and more used even for government communication services. Given the 5G and the evolutions, the advancements in the technology information, especially for certain types of services, these private operators will play a more important role in the EU or NATO context. Yes. Thank you. I shall be brief. I think Romania benefited immensely from becoming a member of these organizations. In the digital world, globalized world makes geography count less and less, especially when we speak about data that can be in a cloud outside of the regional geography, or quite the opposite. Speaking about the East of West, it's not that important if we speak about the digital world. The legal framework is important. It's aligned at continental level. NATO has standards and formulas that provide benefits even in education and research development. And I think Romania has made a great change for the better in this respect. Everything that does not work is not because of our presence in these organizations. We can evolve faster. We can make up for lost time. The key is good governance at local level, not in Brussels. That's where we need to be more effective by increasing, enhancing our capacity in Romania in terms of making up for lost time. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. I now give the floor to the room for questions.
The Army of Ukraine. What are the top three lessons, practical lessons for Romania?
I can speak my own lessons, let me put it like that. I cannot bring a national view or conclusion on this, but my key takeaways were the following. You can really activate in a swift and sharp manner, let's say, crowds, really groups of experts with financial autonomy, with very little coordination between themselves, and you still give them a common purpose. You can give them common tasks. You can throw problems and incidents at them, and they can come with a solution. So basically, it's a very interesting way, very innovative way to do a kind of crowdsourcing for real serious problems. That's one takeaway. Second takeaway, of course, like many others, we are very worried about what will happen with this virtual army after the conflict. Because all the tools, techniques, protocols, everything they put in place now and they are using, the day after, they can turn it 180 degrees and then we become the targets. So I'm carefully looking at how Ukrainians, how they manage, what exit strategy they have from this, how they are going to manage and give a new purpose to the cyber IT army or Ukrainian cyber army, whatever is the name. And then one last thought. I come from business, so I always think about costs. How much it costs to run and operate. Actually, the operating cost of this Ukrainian cyber army, it's virtually peanuts. Okay, there are virtual machines and tools and stuff they are using, but they prove you can operate a highly efficient, let's say, virtual massive group on a very serious topic in a very cost-efficient manner. And if we look around, and we know, I should not say that, but Chatham House rule, governments have very deep pockets, usually, and they throw money at quite a bunch of solutions, not all of them with a very good return of investment. I think we have to look very, very carefully how much Ukrainians took out of this setup and this way of working in a very cost-effective manner. And maybe make some savings or copy, clone their model and release funding for other more advanced or more present topics. So I hope I gave you 3 thoughts.
Other questions?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Keith Blount. I'm about to take over as NATO's Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Europe, and I'm really interested in critical infrastructure because it's a trending topic at the moment in the alliance, as you may be aware. Stimulated, I think, as much through the Nord Stream attacks as any other reason. And a number of points were made around civil-military cooperation. You made that point, Mihai, and Dan spoke about the importance of information exchange and cooperation. And I just wonder what practical steps we could do to improve the way in which we cooperate and the way in which we share information. Because when things get really tough, and you talked of crisis in the context of earthquakes or almost in a natural disaster sense, but if we were at a point of crisis or an approach to conflict at the alliance level, then I would be relying, or we would be relying, on commercial actors sharing information across 31 nations that may be commercially sensitive, but would nevertheless allow us to address some of the vulnerabilities in the physical protection of networks or data that would otherwise be impossible. And I just wonder how ready we are for that, and what thinking has gone on, as an example, in Vodafone, to understand the protocols that you would put in place to allow that to happen, or not, as the case may be.
Yes, so you are asking if we are ready to share information whenever it's a critical things, yes? This is the idea. Yes, I think it's also endorsed by the law. So if there is, for instance, a terrorist threat, there is a special process between the authorities and the local operators to exchange some information. So yes, at least in Romania. I don't know around Europe, because there are rules in each country, I think. But the capabilities are in place, or you can have capabilities in place for these kind of things. And we have also some SLAs in which time we need to do something or not. For instance, if the request is to shut down the network in a specific area, we need to shut down the network in 30 minutes or 1 hour or 3 hours, or it depends on the problems, you know. So these kind of things.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, and also business continuity and disaster recovery. Yes, for this is, let's say, not in the special conflict, let's say, but we have some examples because we are not operating in Ukraine. But we have some examples like in Turkey, in the recent earthquake. There was a disaster, to be honest, from the communication point of view. And they asked for help for different countries and different, at least Vodafone Turkey. And we sent some equipments like cell on wheel or special equipments that we have for these kind of things in each country. And it's a matter of days, let's say. And we have in our contingency plan to recover 80% of the services in 48 hours. So it doesn't matter what's happened. This is our, let's say, plan in general. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your questions. Thank you very much for the panelists here. And I have to announce the next panel. It's my duty at the end. So the next panel in this room will be panel 7B, New Energy Sources for the Black Sea and Balkan region, Opportunities for a More Secure Future. And the chair will be with Mr. Laurențiu Pachiu, is there waiting for us to free the room. So thank you very much.